Russian President Vladimir Putin held a marathon 5-hour meeting at the Kremlin with the United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and advisor Jared Kushner in a high-stake effort to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. The session, which stretched past midnight, began after the Russian leader made the American diplomats wait for several hours while he attended to other state business, a move interpreted by analysts as a power play to set the tone for the difficult discussions. Kremlin aide Yuri Yushakov later described the talks as useful, constructive, and informative, though he admitted that no final agreement had been reached. While the specific details of the conversation remains strictly confidential, Moscow officials indicated that the Russian leader found some of the American proposals worthy of consideration, but rejected others as completely unacceptable. The primary sticking points remains Russia's insistence on retaining control over occupied territories and imposing strict limits on the Ukrainian military, demands that Kyiv and its European allies have repeatedly dismissed. The meeting concluded without a breakthrough, leaving the future of the peace process uncertain, as both sides agreed to continue their work through quiet diplomatic channels rather than public exchanges. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova emphasized that the confidential nature of the talks was intentional, stating that the negotiations were focused on tangible results rather than public appearance or media narratives. She criticized Western media reports suggesting that Russia had dismissed the American suggestions outright, clarifying that while significant disagreements persist, the dialogue was substantive. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov supported this view, noting that open statements often distort the sensitive nature of expert-level negotiations. He stressed that silence was necessary to preserve the integrity of the process. Meanwhile, Russian President Putin signaled that a deal remains a distant prospect, remarking that the work ahead would be difficult and complex. In a sharp critic of the leadership in Kyiv, Putin claimed that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had cornered himself by blocking elections and refusing to negotiate, asserting that a power shift in Ukraine was inevitable due to what he described as a collapse in public approval for the current administrations. This rhetoric underscores Moscow's strategy of delegitimizing the Ukrainian government while engaging directly with Washington to shape the future security architecture of Eastern Europe. European leaders reacted to the Moscow meeting with deep anxiety, fearing that the United States might be moving toward a deal that compromised Ukrainian sovereignty. A leaked transcript published by Der Spiegel revealed a confidential call involving French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in which Macron warned that Washington could potentially betray Ukraine to secure a quick diplomatic win. The European officials expressed concern that the United States might pressure Kyiv into ceding territory without securing firm security guarantees in return. In response to these fears, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte publicly stated that the alliance would ensure Moscow faces constant pressure if negotiations stagnate. He outlined a two-pronged strategy involving the continued delivery of Western weapons and the intensification of economic sanctions to impact the Russian economy. Rutte insisted that Ukraine must enter any peace talks from a position of strength, a sentiment echoed by other NATO foreign ministers who dismissed Putin's warning of a wider war with Europe as psychological operations intended to frighten the alliance into making concessions. On the battlefield, Russians sought to project dominance and momentum to coincide with the diplomatic talks. Just hours before meeting the American envoys, the Kremlin released footage of President Putin wearing military fatigues to declare victory in the strategic city of Pokrovsk, a claim that Kyiv strongly rejected. The Russian Ministry of Defense also reported significant advance in the Zaporizhzhia region, claiming the capture of the village of Chervonoye and the seizure of more than 12 square kilometers of territory. Moscow stated that its force had inflicted heavy losses on Ukrainian troops, estimating over 1,000 casualties in a single day, and the destruction of Western-supplied military hardware, including German howitzers and 6 rocket launchers. These announcements were widely viewed by analysts as a calculated effort to demonstrate that time and military reality favors Russia, thereby strengthening its hand at the negotiating table. The timing of the battlefield update served as a stark reminder to the American delegation that Russia believes it can achieve its objective through military force if diplomatic efforts fail to meet its core demand. Beyond the immediate conflict in Ukraine, the geopolitical landscape continues to fracture as alliance shift and new military realities emerge. Leaked industrial files suggest that Russia has deepened its strategic military cooperation with Iran, with reports indicating that Moscow is producing dozens of advanced Su-35 fighter jets for Tehran. This transfer of air power represents a major shift in the Middle East military balance and highlight the growing coordination between nations sanctioned by the West. Simultaneously, President Putin issued one of his starkest warnings to Europe, stating that Russia is fully prepared for war if European nations choose the path of conflict. He cautioned that escalation could reach a point where there is no one left to negotiate with on the European side. Despite these threats, Russian officials maintain that they do not seek a war with NATO, but will not hesitate to respond with overwhelming force if their security interests are threatened. As the Kremlin prepares for President Putin's upcoming visit to India to strengthen ties with the global south, the war remains locked in a precarious balance between fragile diplomatic initiatives and the expanding scope of global conflict. If you have made it this far, congratulations, you have unlocked the truth. I want to ask you a quick question though. Considering the marathon 5-hour meeting in the Kremlin and the leaked transcript suggesting European fears of a betrayal, do you believe the United States is genuinely seeking a fair peace for Ukraine? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a calculated geopolitical transaction where Kyiv's sovereignty is sacrificed to pivot focus toward China, with Putin signaling that the war is far from over and demanding territorial concessions that seemingly validate his military aggression? Does the West have any leverage left, or has the strategy of attrition effectively handed the diplomatic advantage to Moscow? And why? Join the debate. We want to hear your insightful opinion on what this is all heading in our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Like the video, share this video with friends and family, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.